the night shift. I'm about to tell you the real reason I quit my job at that gas station and why I still check my locks 3 times every night. This happened when I was 19, working the graveyard shift at a Shell station in Bakersfield. Look, I know this sounds crazy. I posted about it on Reddit and half the comments called me a liar. But I have proof now. Screenshots, photos, even security footage. So hear me out. The station was one of those older Shell stations, right off Highway 99, the kind with flickering neon signs and a single bathroom that always smelled like industrial cleaner. My shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., Thursday through Sunday. The pay was decent for a college student, $12 an hour, but looking back, no amount of money was worth what I went through. The manager, Dave, was this middle-aged guy who chain-smoked Marlboros and always wore the same greasy Dodgers cap. During my first week, he gave me one warning that I should have taken more seriously. Just be polite, take their money, and whatever you do, don't engage with the crazy ones. Most nights were pretty boring. I'd study for my psychology classes between customers, maybe sell some gas and Red Bulls to truckers passing through. The regulars were mostly harmless. There was Miguel, who worked construction and always bought a large coffee and a breakfast burrito around 5 a.m., and Mrs. Chen, an elderly lady who suffered from insomnia and would come in for lottery tickets and small talk around 2 a.m. Mrs. Chen was sweet, but always seemed sad. She'd buy the same numbers every night, 10, 23, 87, and she'd always ask about my studies. I actually looked forward to seeing her, but then everything changed in my 3rd week. That's when he started showing up. There was this one guy who started showing up around my 3rd week. He was maybe in his 40s, always wore the same black hoodie pulled up over his head. He'd come in every night around 1:30 a.m., buy a single pack of spearmint gum, and pay with exact change. Always 75 cents, always quarters and nickels. At first, I thought he was just another regular. Weird, but harmless. I was so wrong. What made him weird wasn't just that he bought the same thing every night. It was the way he stared at me. Not like checking me out, but like he was studying me. And guys, I want you to understand, this wasn't normal staring. This was the kind of stare that made my skin crawl, like he was memorizing every detail of my face. He'd stand at the counter for way too long after paying, just looking at me with these pale gray eyes that seemed too wide for his face. I started timing him. He'd stand there for exactly 3 minutes and 17 seconds, every single night. I know because I started counting to deal with how uncomfortable it made me. And here's the really weird part. Every time he left, the store would get inexplicably cold for about 10 minutes, like someone had cranked the AC to freezing, even though the thermostat never changed. I actually started bringing a hoodie to work just because of this. The temperature would drop so fast that I could see my breath sometimes. I mentioned it to Dave one morning and he just shrugged. Probably some night shift worker with OCD or something. As long as he's not causing trouble, don't worry about it. But Dave wasn't the one being stared at for 3 minutes straight every night. Dave wasn't the one whose hands started shaking every time 1:30 a.m. rolled around. But it was hard not to worry. Every night at 1:30, like clockwork, there he was, same hoodie, same gum, same stare. I started dreading going to work. My psychology textbook has a whole chapter on fight or flight response, and I was living in constant fight or flight mode. Then one Thursday night in October, he didn't show up. I actually felt relieved. I remember thinking, finally, maybe this nightmare is over. I was so naive. But around 2:15 a.m., I heard this slow tapping on the glass. I looked up from my textbook and saw him standing outside the window. Not at the door, but at the side window that faced the parking lot. He was just standing there, tapping his finger on the glass, staring at me. This is where it gets really messed up, and I need you to believe me because I have the security footage to prove what I'm about to tell you. I waved at him and pointed to the door, figuring he didn't realize the store was still open. But when I looked closer, I realized something impossible. There were no footprints in the wet pavement leading to where he stood, even though it had been raining earlier and the parking lot was covered in puddles. I went to the door and looked at the ground. There were puddles everywhere from the rain, but where he was standing, completely dry. No footprints leading to that spot, no footprints leading away. He didn't move. He just kept tapping and staring. I called Dave with shaking hands. "Dave, you need to get down here right now. Something is really wrong." But Dave just brushed me off, said if the guy wasn't trying to break in, it wasn't his problem. I hung up and went back to my seat behind the counter, but I couldn't focus on my textbook. Every time I looked up, he was still there, tapping slowly on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. That tapping sound still haunts my dreams. It was so methodical, so deliberate. Around 3 a.m., I decided to brave it and look directly at him. He was still there, but now he was holding something up to the window. It took me a second to realize what it was. A photograph. When I tell you my blood ran cold, I mean it literally. I felt all the warmth leave my body. From where I was sitting, I couldn't make out what the picture was of, but he was pressing it against the glass, like he wanted me to see it. I walked over to the window, staying far back that he couldn't reach me if he tried to grab me through the glass. As I got closer, I could see the photograph more clearly. It was a picture of me. Not just any picture. It was a picture of me working, taken from outside the store. I was behind the counter, probably from a few nights ago, and I was wearing the same blue flannel shirt I had on right now. I want you to understand how impossible this was. The camera angle meant he had to be standing exactly where he was standing right now, but I would have seen him. The store has floor-to-ceiling windows. There's nowhere to hide. This is where the story gets really crazy, and where I found out the truth about what was happening to me. I stumbled backward, nearly knocking over a display of motor oil. He pressed the photo harder against the glass, and I could see he was smiling now. Not a normal smile, but this wide, unnatural grin that showed way too many teeth. I ran to the back office and called 911. The dispatcher kept asking me to describe the man, but how do you describe someone who shouldn't exist? While I was on the phone, I heard other customers in the store. A trucker had just walked in. When the cops arrived, I asked him if he'd seen the man outside. He looked at me confused and said, "Miss, I've been parked out there for 20 minutes. There was nobody by that window. Nobody at all." The trucker looked at me like I was crazy, and maybe I was starting to think I was crazy too. The police found nothing. No fingerprints, no evidence, no sign anyone had been there. But I had that photograph. Except when I looked for it the next morning, it was gone from my pocket. I quit the next morning. Dave called me dramatic, said I was overreacting, but I wasn't sticking around to find out what would happen next. This is where it gets really interesting, and because I wasn't the first person this happened to. I started digging. I posted about my experience on a local Facebook group, asking if anyone else had encountered someone matching his description. The responses I got changed everything. I realized I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. And this thing, whatever it was, had been doing this for years. The responses chilled me to the bone. A waitress at the diner across the street said she'd seen him standing in the same spot every night for months, but whenever she looked directly at him, he'd vanish. A security guard from the shopping center nearby said their cameras would malfunction every night around 1:30 a.m., showing only static for exactly 15 minutes. But the comment that made me realize the truth came from someone I knew, someone who had been coming to that store for every night for 30 years. Most disturbing was a comment from a woman who used to work at the same gas station 5 years ago. She described the exact same man, down to the pale gray eyes and the spearmint gum. But here's the kicker. She said she'd figured out who he was. And when she told me, everything clicked into places. Remember Mrs. Chen, my sweet elderly regular who came in every night for lottery tickets? Well, she had never told me her full story. I've been researching the history of that gas station. Turns out it was built on the site of an old convenience store that burned down in 1987. A night shift worker died in that fire, a man in his 40s who was known for his obsessive routines and pale gray eyes. His name was Richard Chen. Mrs. Chen wasn't just a regular customer. She was a mother looking for her dead son. Mrs. Chen, my elderly regular customer, she was his mother. She's been coming to that spot every night for over 30 years, buying her lottery tickets and hoping to see her son again. Those lottery numbers she played every night, 10, 23, 87, that was the date he died, October 23rd, 1987. She just never told me that sometimes she actually does. I called Mrs. Chen after I figured it out. She cried when she heard my voice. She said, "He's been trying to communicate for so long."
You're the first person who stayed long enough to see him clearly. But the story doesn't end there, because Richard wasn't done with me. 2 weeks later, I was walking to my car after my shift at my new job at Target when I saw him again. Same black hoodie, same pale gray eyes. He was standing under a streetlight in the parking lot, about 50 feet away, just watching me. When I looked at him, he held up another photograph. Even from that distance, I could tell it was a picture of me walking to my car. This time, I didn't run. I walked toward him, and for the first time, he spoke. His voice was like wind through dead leaves. He said, "Tell her I'm okay. Tell her I'm not in pain anymore. Tell her she can stop coming." When I blinked, he was gone, but I knew what I had to do. I went back to the gas station one more time. Mrs. Chen was there, like always, buying her lottery tickets. I told her what Richard had said. She looked at me for a long moment, tears in her eyes, and then she smiled. "I knew he was there," she said. "I could feel him, but I didn't know if he was at peace." She bought her tickets one last time, kissed the numbers, and left. She never came back. I'm 23 now, and I still check my locks 3 times before bed. But not because I'm scared anymore, because I learned that sometimes the scariest things are just people trying to say goodbye. And sometimes the most beautiful thing you can do is help them find peace. I still think about Mrs. Chen sometimes. I hope she's sleeping better now. I hope they both are.